Hey everybody, it's Charlene. Today I'm sharing this gorgeous holiday card and I'm going to share with you how to make these amazing vintage Christmas bells. Let's get started. I'm going to be using the honey cuts from Honeybee Stamps. These are the layering holiday bells, but before I do that I need to get my vintage paper started. I've got some distressed mica stain here in Crooked Broomstick, and then I'm going to splatter on some spray stain in the color Picket Fence as well as black soot. I was inspired to create these based on a video that was put up by Yvette the Card Girl, who I know, she's wonderful, and I'll link down below in the description to that video. She created some vintage bells using her inks, and I wanted to see if I could do it with my mica sprays, and they turn out amazing. So I've got my bells die cut here, and now I'm starting out with some Gathered Twigs Distress ink, and I'm going all the way around. You can see those two full bells, and then I cut one, which is the top portion of the bell, and that's going to make it look like the bell has an open bottom. That'll make more sense as we go on. So once I've got a nice coating of that gathered twigs on there, I'm bringing in some ground espresso, and I'm taking the ground espresso again all the way around the sides, but I'm not bringing it up quite as far onto the cardstock. This will create a nice fade from the mica stain to the gathered twigs to the ground espresso, and then finally here with the black soot, which I'm going to do with the lightest hand, and I'm doing that again all the way around the edges, except on one of the full-size bells I'm going to bring it up a little bit on the bottom because that's going to be the shaded area of the inside of our bell. So once I get those all nice and inky, I'm going to go ahead here and die cut all of the other little pieces that go on top of the bell. I have gathered twigs again, and I'm just barely going over these to kind of dirty them up a bit, just to give them a little bit more aging. And it doesn't take very much. I'm just kind of tapping on the top and then going around the edges as well. These pieces glue on top of the other bells, so you could do them in different colors as kind of decoration pieces, but I wanted them to look like they were part of the actual molded bell, so I kept them in the same color scheme. So I'm going to layer these up. You can see what I was talking about now, where that top piece, when you glue it on top of the full bell, it makes it so that you can see the inside portion of the bell there down at the bottom. And now I have the little part that makes the bell ring, and I've glued that together, and I'm going to slide it underneath that top layer of the bell so that you can see that part kind of hanging out from the bottom of the bell. Now I'm going to make one later for the other bell, but I'm just going to tuck it underneath. So you can see here I've got the other pieces. These are the ones that I distressed, and I'm going to come in and glue them right on top. Just using liquid adhesive here. It's definitely what I recommend using when you're putting together small die cuts like this. And if you get too much on a die cut, you can absolutely tap it off onto a paper towel or a piece of tissue, which you're going to see me do here in just a minute. So if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I don't do a lot of cards with small die cut pieces, and I also don't do a ton of distressing, but this called out to me. I just knew that I needed to make these vintage style bells because they just evoke that really nice, warm, homey holiday feeling. So I was very excited to try this out, and it worked really well with the mica stain. And if you don't have mica stain, you could just start out with the entire thing covered in gathered twigs and then go over the edges with that ground espresso and the black soot. So you don't have to have a mica stain. You could spritz it with some water mixed with some pearls to achieve that same shimmery look that I was going for on these. You also could color them with any kind of metallic marker before you do the inking, and that is one of the things that Yvette mentioned in her video that, like I said, is linked down in the description. So if you want to try this technique, I suggest watching her video too, because she shares lots of tips and tricks as well. So there you can see I tucked that other little part that hangs out from the bell down at the bottom there, and I only have it showing just partially out the bottom. So once I've got my bells done, I can show you here. Look how pretty they are. They're just shimmery and gorgeous. Oh, I love them. I'm going to do my bow. It's a 2-layer bow, and I am using peppermint stick distress mica spray for that. And again, once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and layer it up with the liquid adhesive as well. So it's a really pretty bow. I thought the whole thing should be shiny, and you're going to see I also am going to bring in some greenery. Now the greenery does not go with the honey cuts of the layering holiday bells. It is a separate piece of greenery that I grabbed out of my stash, a die that I cut out, and it was exclusive, I believe, to a Concord and 9th event that I went to. Now the bow, I am again coming in with a little bit of ink here on the edges. That just creates so much more dimension to your die cuts by doing that, because it makes them look more 3D. So this is Barn Door Distress ink. I used all Distress inks. I did not use any oxides on this card, in case you're wondering. And once I get my little bow there, how I like it, you're going to see I'm coming in with this gorgeous background stamp. I love background stamps, and this one is pretty awesome. I'm stamping it out here in some black pigment ink. This is the Holly Jolly background, also from Honeybee Stamps. And what I really, really like about this background stamp is that it does have coordinating die cuts that you can purchase to cut out some of those words in there as sentiments. You also could just use your paper trimmer or your scissors to cut those out and use them as sentiments. So you have tons of sentiment options, but you could also use it as a background stamp. I think that is so cool. You could stamp this and heat emboss it. Here with the black, I'm going to be distressing this, and it's going to look really, really gorgeous once it's done. So once I get that done, I'm going to cut it down a little bit, because I'm going to put it on the top of a piece of craft cardstock to kind of further evoke that vintagey feeling. So this craft cardstock here is Nina Desert Storm. And I'm coming in again with the gathered twigs and the ground espresso. I'm skipping the black soot on this part because I wanted it to just be this nice distressed brown color. So the gathered twigs I took up and kind of onto the paper, and then the ground espresso I'm going around just on the edges, and I'm just making sure that I get everything nice and vintagey looking. I love this so much. So now I'm cutting out that background piece. I love it. Santa Claus, holly, ho, 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 all these cute little things. And then I've got the black soot for this piece, and I'm very, very lightly going to go around the edges. I don't want to grunge this piece up too much because I want it to still be able to be red, and I still want to have some areas that are white on here. So I'm just going around lightly, and you're going to see later I do add a little bit of gathered twigs on there as well. I'm not doing it quite yet. So there's the greenery I mentioned earlier, and I have Distress Mica spray and holly branch for these. And then I'm bringing in some Rustic Wilderness Distress ink, and again I'm just kind of dabbing over the top, going here and there. And you certainly could wait and kind of spray your paper and then add some ink and then die cut it, but it's not going to give you the same look as if you go in with your inks after it's die cut. Next here I've got the Jingle All the Way stamps. There are coordinating dies for this as well. I'm not using it for this specific card, But I've got another piece of craft cardstock here because that's going to tie in with our outer border. I hit it with some anti-static powder tool, and now I'm using some Versamark embossing ink, and I'm going to heat emboss this using some Black Wow embossing powder. And just want to make sure to tap off and get rid of any little excess pieces that might be on there before you melt it with your heat gun. And you guys may have noticed this video is sped up a fair bit. That's largely because there is a lot of distressing going on here. So trust me, this is not real time on these. It does take me a little bit longer than what you're seeing here to get all of this lovely vintage vibe going on. So I've cut down that sentiment into a strip, and then I am going to cut a fishtail at the end. You just cut up the center with your scissors, and then you put your scissors to the corner and take it to the center on each side. I do hold my scissors underneath a little bit, and that tends to help. So I did go back here and add a little bit more of that ground espresso. I wanted to darken it up a little bit. And on this, I'm also using the gathered twigs. So the same colors that I used on the background piece that you're going to see here once we put the card together. So now I can go ahead and use some liquid adhesive to glue this onto that beautiful background piece that has all of those fun vintage holiday words on it. And I'm going to make this so it goes about, I don't know, 5/6 of the way across, and then trim off the little bit of excess that's there. I did come back in again with some of the gathered twigs just to darken up that edge, and this is when I decided that I wanted to also add a little bit of that gathered twigs onto here to kind of just give it more of a old paper look. So now I've got my liquid adhesive and I can glue everything down to my card base. This is an A2 size card, so it's 4 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches, and I'm going to glue this on there. Just a note, when you are doing this kind of distressing, if you really want it to have that vintagey look, you don't want to cut your card panel down after you've done your inking. You want to make sure you have it cut to the size you want before you do the inking, so that way all of the edges are nice and dark from the distressing. So I've got a piece of craft foam here that I've cut down slightly smaller than my background piece because I want this to be popped up, but I don't want to use anything too thick, and I also want to make sure this can go through the mail really well, so I didn't use my foam tape for this particular card. I'm just making sure I get a fair amount of liquid adhesive on the back there. I am using Gina K Connect glue for this card. I personally really like this glue just because it takes a while to dry and it's comes out kind of thin, but it has a very, very strong bond. So for me, I really like that. I like it because you don't really see any glue lines underneath anything because it flattens out really well. So I'm going to adhere my 2 bells together. I like to do this anytime I have die cut images that I am putting on a card. I like to try and put them together first. So I did add some adhesive foam squares on the back of there so that these bells will be popped up. They're kind of thin. I did not use the real thick ones. And now I can glue my bell on there, and I am going to go ahead and add a little bit of an adhesive foam square underneath that left hand side of the bow. I don't think I kept that in the video, but just to keep it kind of popped up so it doesn't get smushed down, I did do that off camera. Once I get my bow down, now I can see about my greenery. I did trim it down. I just have a few little pieces to stick back behind the bow. I wish this was kind of more like a fir style, like a fir tree, but it works still. It still looks really cute with these bells back behind there. Definitely check out the honey cut greenery die cuts. I'm going to link those down in the description because I wish I had got those. I wish I had purchased those when I was getting these bells because they would have went together perfect. So here is my finished card. Look at that cool vintage vibe this card has got going on. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue bringing you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, Happy crafting!